And welcome back to The Price of Business. I'm your host, Chris Kelso, this morning. Man, we started off with a great segment. We're going to continue on here with Ruth Sherman. Ruth, how are you doing?
I'm well, Chris. How are you?
Well, doing very well. You know, you are the author of the 30 Best, Most Effective, Most Overlooked Marketing and Personal Branding Essentials. Boy, that's
Yes,
a mouthful right
yes.
there. Well, let us know a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Absolutely, Chris. I am a CEO and celebrity speech and media coach. My clients come to me because they want to be great in public, and not everybody is. So the people who recognize this get an advantage. They get a leg up.
Well, you know, I definitely agree with that. You know, and one of the things, in fact, I love speaking about public speaking, about how to be great at what you do. You know, some people are great at what they do naturally, but a lot of times people have to be taught and learn how to be great. It's not something that's always inherent in everybody.
That's right. And people think that you have to be born this way, but the truth is charisma is not inborn. It is learned. Ask anybody who has it.
I would absolutely agree right there. Well, you know, what are some of the things you speak to people about? How do you go about if someone wants to be great in public, wants to be great in getting out there and learning? How does that process start?
Well, it is learned by doing, Chris, as I'm sure you being a great a professional voice user would understand, right? You have a beautiful speaking voice. It's not something that just is a miracle. It's sure you were born with some chops, but you honed it over time. The biggest stumbling block that my busy clients have is they don't take the time to work at it, to practice. You know, they're always putting out fires at their real jobs, so to speak. So, yeah, it's tough. You got to make the time.
You know, and you said something very interesting. I tell everybody has their unique voice in the world. We're all born, as you mentioned, with our voice that we speak with. But you have to learn over a period of time how to actually have your voice from a persona perspective, from a public speaking perspective. And everyone is going to have to learn that a different way. But more importantly is we all have it, but it's not necessarily a trait, as you mentioned right there, that's inherent. It has to be practiced. It has to be done over and over again. You have to find an individual like yourself who can show individuals how to find that voice. And the other thing I tell everybody is to stand alone. Don't copy, lead.
Absolutely. That is such a great piece of advice, Chris. In fact, one of the things that people say to me all the time is, you know, I just want to be myself. I want to be authentic. And my response to that is, hey, you have a lot of different selves. You have yourself when you're having a glass of wine with friends, and you have yourself when you're on a stage in front of 1,000 people. They're both part of you. So make sure that you adjust accordingly.
Oh, I would absolutely agree. You know, and the other thing is never, you know, imitation is the highest form of flattery, as they say. But I tell everybody it's good to learn from others, but create your own personality. Be true to who you are. Don't try to be somebody else and not be true to who you are, because people can see through things all the time.
They absolutely can. They know a phony. You can spot them 100 yards away. And the other thing, too, is that if you do use somebody's line, for example, make sure you attribute it to that person. Don't just take it.
That's a very good, you know, I joke with everybody and say, you know, the first time I'm going to tell you that it's yours. The second time I'm going to reference you a little bit. By the third time, I'm going to steal it. But it's always a joke I tell everybody on there. But you are right. It's important to know, you know, one of the things that we've seen out there in society, we've seen individuals have to quit their jobs, how to recant, et cetera, because they don't know how to properly reference resource material. And,
that's right.
You know, and whether that be the spoken language, whether you're on radio or on TV or something you're writing in a book or you're doing a presentation, you have to make sure that you always reference the correct source material and give credit to those who came before you, who gave you the ability to repeat that in the future.
Absolutely, and it comes back. It comes back in very good ways when you do that, when you show yourself to be honorable in that way. So you couldn't be more correct about that, and I agree.
You know, let's talk a little bit about the 30 best, most effective, most overlooked marketing and personal branding essentials. What are some of the main ones that generally stand out in regards to that?
Well, I'm going to really just put it out there. It's practicing. It is saying it out loud. So if you're about to get up on a stage or you're going on TV or on the radio, right, you want to be prepared.
Right.
And most people won't take the time to do that because, let's face it, Chris, it's boring and it's tedious to say things out loud. And that's the trick. You have to say it out loud. In your head doesn't count. we're all very eloquent in our own heads. We don't imagine ourselves stepping out there and flopping. We imagine ourselves being great. But, hey, if you wing it, you're taking a big risk. So that's one big one, and one that my busy clients, as I may have mentioned a moment ago, always trip over.
And the one thing is that fear of failure, right? So on the one side of things, a lot of times individuals aren't prepared to go ahead and go forward in a public speaking event, on radio, wherever it needs to be. Then the other side of things is their fear of failure, unfortunately, allows them not to practice and become better at what they do.
Yeah, it's like a catch-22. You're kind of damned if you do and damned if you don't. But the bottom line is the people who practice are the ones who become the big celebrity CEOs, the people like Steve Jobs, the people like Oprah Winfrey, the people like Bill Clinton, people who are well known as being charismatic. And, these people work at it. They got it. They figured it out a long time ago that this was going to make their life easier. And ultimately, that's what it does. So here's the bottom line. If you want your life and your business life especially to be easier, get on board with practicing.
I like that. One of the things you can go YouTube this, you can go out there on some old channels. You can see, you just got through mentioning some, you mentioned Oprah Winfrey, you mentioned Steve Jobs.
Yep.
One of the things, if you go back and look at the old Apple days, or if you look at the old Harpo days with Oprah, they were not as eloquent in their speaking. They were not as good. They were not as refined and polished as what we see them on the top of their game as what they were, obviously prior to Stephen Jobs passing away, but who Oprah is today. They were raw. They were
raw. They were
and you can go and see
not
that.
As experienced. And this is, like I said earlier, on-the-job training. You can't get good at it unless you're doing it. And a lot of people are afraid to stick their necks out. But, hey, everybody has to stick their neck out and give this a whirl, if you want to get good at it, that is.
And what do you say to somebody who says, but you know what, I'm afraid of failure. I'm afraid of making a mistake. I'm afraid of being listened to and not coming across correctly or not giving the image that I wanted to have. What do you say to somebody like that?
Here's what I say. I say those people in that audience are so glad it's you up there and not them. You have such an advantage if you do your best, if you do the work that I teach you to do and that people like me teach them to do. They will be good enough, and they will only have to get better from there. So I would never advise somebody to go out completely unprepared. We don't want them to flop, but being afraid is no excuse to not get in the spotlight.
And I would absolutely agree right there. I think it was great what you said. It's better you than me a lot of times.
Yep.
But, on the other side of things, you have speakers that sit there and go, I wish I was in the audience versus being up here. So, there's always a catch-22, as you mentioned. I've always told everybody the following is failure actually leads to future success. A lot of times you have to get out there. You have to make sure you can make those speeches. You have to get in front of individuals. And remember, this is not only one-on-one, but this goes anything. One-on-1, 1-on-5, 1-on-50, 1-on-500. You always have to be practicing and never be afraid to fail a little bit, because you're going to learn so much from that failure and saying, at least I tried, versus the alternative of saying, I didn't ever try to do it.
Absolutely. And the people who are best at that, including the people whom I mentioned before and all of the other great, masterful speakers out there, know it's a never-ending journey. You're always learning. You get up there and certain things go well, other things you need to tweak. And that's what makes it so much fun, is it's so dynamic in that way. And what you want is to get to that one point where you've got people waiting in line, waiting to meet you when you're done, or calling you and saying, wow, I saw that, you were awesome. And you can get there if you do the work.
If you do the work, I would agree. The other side of things is I had a speaking event that I gave last week, and one of the things that I said was, remember two things. Listen carefully, because we're born with two ears and one mouth, so listening can absolutely make you a better speaker. And sometimes don't use filler words. Silence can be golden.
Absolutely. And watch the corporate monotone, right? That sort of hushed, serious sound that so many corporate executives seem to have these days. And watch the uptalk, which tends to be among young people, where everything sounds like a question, right? Everything seems to go up at the end. You don't want to sound unsure. So you're talking about voice, which is another huge and important secret to learn. And,
I would absolutely agree. I could sit here and talk about this with you forever, Ruth, but we're going to have to be coming to the end of this show and this segment. Can you let us know how I can reach you if you don't mind?
Oh, absolutely. Go to my website, which is ruthsherman.com. In fact, it's brand new. When people get this, it's brand new.
ruthsherman.com. That's RuthSherman. Ruth, thank you very much for being on board today.
My pleasure, Chris. And please, I wanted to also say that the Secrets will go on sale also. Will be on sale at Amazon.
That sounds great. That is Ruth Sherman. I am Chris Kelso, hosting For the Price of Business. We've got to take another break. Pay with these sponsors. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.